what is going on, guys? It is Amari, and it has been a very long time since I dropped my last video. It must have been like a month ago, right? That I dropped my last video. A lot has happened, a lot has came up, but ultimately I just have not really felt like there was much to talk about in these last few weeks. I mean, of course, here and there's different stuff that comes out, but I just feel like the UFC days continues to just be pissed on by Dana White, who's literally supposed to be the promoter. But the way that Dana White has been operating these days has been so uninspired, so unmotivating. The way he's talking about just different things like, who gives a shit? Just watch the fights. Like, bro, Dana, the way that he's been treating the sport right now is honestly like, we don't deserve it. We're fans. We want to see the best on the best. I guess ever since really just the latest like fight news has come out, knowing what we could have gotten and getting it, it really like has left this weird feeling in me right now with how the UFC has been. I went from being so excited and addicted to the sport for like 2 years to now just really, I don't know, kind of almost forgetting about certain things and not being as hyped for the cards that come each week. Because again, the UFC right now just feels so uninspired and motivated. And I really just hope this could turn around and we have a big summer ahead of us. I mean, the White House will still be a massive spectacle, and then you got International Fight Week. There's a lot that's going on, but in the meantime, you have UFC 327 this week in Miami. Always has been a big card that they put on. And it's Jiri Prochazka fight week. Jiri Prochazka, bro. One of the most chaotic and entertaining fighters we could get. Getting another chance to become a light heavyweight champion. And this fight also lost a big co-main event in Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira. But that fight has been moved now to UFC 328 in New Jersey. So kind of a big, not such a big step back. Like, it's been a little bit of a push, a delay in that fight because of Joshua Van, but he is coming back to fight Taira now in UFC 328 in Newark, New Jersey. So Van versus Taira, that kind of adds a lot to that card. And now it's a really, really good card with Strickland Hamzat, Van versus Taira, and then Brady versus Joaquin Buckley, and then also Waldo versus Volkov. So really good card. That will have to now react to that fight when it comes around in New Jersey later in May. But in the meantime, here we go. April, Miami. Carlos Ulberg versus Jiri Prochazka. Now Curtis Blaydes and Hokit seems to be the co-main event. And then followed by that is Dominick Reyes versus Johnny Walker. Paulo Costa versus Azamat Murzakonov. And then now to open up the card is Cub Swanson versus Nate Landwehr. So as usual, I'm going to break the card starting from the bottom and working my way up. And yeah, what else has happened really in the UFC until now? I mean, there's so much that probably has gone by that I just haven't really talked about. Oh yeah, Evloev had a super boring fight versus Murphy. Vallejos is looking like a crazy new star in the featherweight division, finishing Josh Emmett, which not even Ilia Topuria could do. Really was such an identical fight that he was given. He's really on the same, like, it's so identical to the career path that Ilia Topuria was given. And I really think Vallejos is going to be one of the best guys soon. Future Topuria star. I mean, Izzy is on a down pad losing streak. Just lost to Joe Pyfer. Got badly taken out. That's 4 straight losses for Izzy. I really thought this was the one for Izzy to bounce back to. I really thought so. And it sucked to see. It really did. And Pyfer's now in a top 5. And then Moicano just had a really big statement comeback win versus Chris Duncan. Like, that was pretty. Chris Duncan's usually a really good fighter, but going now against Moicano and Moicano finish him like that, had him pretty bloodied up already and then submitted him. Really good comeback win from Moicano to continue to show he's somewhat of a player in this lightweight division and he's not someone to look past. So now let's get into the main thing, right? Prochazka versus Ulberg. As I just mentioned, Van versus Taira is now off the card the week of. So flyweight title fights still in the queue. So let's just look at the early prelims real quick. You got Charles Radke versus Francisco Prado. Not much to say on that. Radke did have, I think, a comeback win as of recent. Why isn't this opening up? But Vicente Luque versus Gastelum. Vicente Luque got spared from fighting Kyle Dawkins, and I actually think that this is a pretty winnable matchup for him versus Kelvin Gastelum. Both veterans of the game, and one of these dudes will finally get a win back in the column. They've been around for a very long time. Both were at one point very, like, respectable, big, like, high-ranked names. And now they're just down bad guys fighting on the early prelims in Miami. So, I don't know. It could swing either way. I feel like Luque maybe is alive to win. But yeah, Kevin Gastelum's a hard guy to put out. We saw him survive Joe Pyfer's big shot. So, Vicente Luque, as we know, is more of the ground specialist. Not too long ago, he choked out Temba Garimbo, but then lost to Yoel Alvarez, but survived Yoel Alvarez for 5 rounds. He also lost to Kevin Holland. So yeah, that's kind of been Luque's last few fights. Chris Padilla's coming back. He's been on a little bit of a tear. I think he's undefeated still in his UFC run so far. He's a pretty good fighter, Chris Padilla. Tatiana Sars versus Lupi Gundinez. Don't really care about that fight. Kevin Holland versus Randy Brown. Yeah, Kevin Holland, first fight of 2026. Pretty slow start to the year for Kevin Holland, a guy who we're used to seeing fight, 6 times a year? He's coming off like 2 straight losses, or maybe just a loss. He lost to Mike Malott, and he lost to Rodriguez. He always puts together a few wins here, a few losses there. Same thing with Randy Brown, but Randy Brown was actually on a pretty good run, has only lost to some pretty top-tier names. He had that crazy knockout in Kansas City versus Darby, and that was a pretty big move for him. He also should have beaten Brian Battle, so that should not have been on a loss on his record. He should really be 21-6 right now, but whatever. So he had a pretty big back-and-forth battle that people thought he won versus Brian Battle, knocked out Darby, and then now he just lost to Gabriel Bonfim. So both lengthy, long guys in the welterweight division. Kevin Holland recently has moved back into the welterweight division after having a little bit of a run in middleweight. I think both guys are live to win, but maybe, Randy Brown he has more hunger to his game. He has more motivation. I mean, when Kevin Holland is on, he is on. He'll armbar you. He'll look like he'll have some really good stand-up performances. He might just pop out and show him like King Green did in his fight versus Zellhuber. But Randy Brown also is just a really good volume striker, manages his distance well, long, lengthy arms and range. And, this is just a good, middle-of-the-pack fight for 2 guys that are names. Kevin Holland has always been kind of a name, fun, entertaining. Maybe he's going to be talking with Randy Brown, so that will make this fight a little funner, more fun. That's not a word, funner, but Randy Brown versus Kevin Holland, good little scrap fight in the prelims. Mateus Gamrot versus, this is, as always, the Miami, they stack it up, make it a very complete card. Esteban Ribovics is finally on a pay-per-view. This dude deserved to be out of the Apex. This dude puts on some of the most entertaining fights, so don't sleep on him. The dude out of Argentina, super high-volume striker. Did he lose, or I think he actually lost to Nasrat Hakparas. Yeah, he did, but it was a very close fight. Decision split. Beat Zellhuber at the Sphere, beat Terrence McKinney, and look what Terrence McKinney just did to Gunnar Nelson in a round. And he KO'd him with a crazy, vicious KO. And also beat Brenner. So Ribovics is so entertaining, bro. Watch out for this fight. And then Mateus Gamrot had a humbling big loss to Charles Oliveira, but not really humbling because Charles Oliveira is just Charles Oliveira. He's elite. He's now the BMF. What he's been doing, Mateus Gamrot was just a stepping stone for Oliveira to get back to that BMF title fight. But Gamrot, we know he's going to try to, use endurance, use ground game, try to wear out Esteban Ribovics. So this is an interesting stylistic clash because Gamrot's more of a ground guy. He would be kind of stupid to keep it on the feet with a guy like Ribovics, who's a super high volume striker. And he's dancing. He's in that street fighter stance. And Esteban Ribovics is going to be going in and trying to throw and tag up Gamrot. So this is an interesting fight of how much is Gamrot going to want to wrestle and keep Ribovics on the ground? How well will Ribovics be able to defend that? How much will Ribovics be able to put on Gamrot? It's going to be an interesting, unpredictable fight of whose style will take over the fight. Gamrot has more of the edge on the ground. Ribovics has more of the edge on the feet. And I have no doubt if Ribovics could outstrike Gamrot, but Gamrot, I don't know if he's looking to play around. I don't think he's going to want to try to get 2 straight losses. He'll try to just maybe grapple and wrestling with Ribovics, and I don't know. I haven't seen enough of Ribovics. So far, they've been giving him fun matchups in the Apex. Fun fights that allow him to showcase on the feet, which is he has been doing, and why we could say now, yo, Ribovics, get him on a pay-per-view, because this dude is must watch. he's must watch. That's the way this guy fights. So, Esteban Ribovics versus Gamrot. This is a tough one. I think maybe Gamrot's going to have a comeback fight. I like Ribovics, and I want Ribovics to win because he's just the more entertaining fighter, and I want him to make some noise at lightweight. But my inner instinct is telling me Gamrot is due for a comeback win somewhat in this fight. Like, Gamrot's a pretty good fighter, but he's actually taken losses to Hooker, and Hooker definitely like outdogged him in that fight and struck with him. So, and he beat Klein. So yeah, that's what I'm feeling for that fight. Then in this main event, not main event, what am I saying? In the featured prelim, you got Aaron Pico and Patricio Pitbull, which is pretty crazy, and it's pretty funny how the UFC took what is was probably Bellator's biggest fight, right? In Bellator, this would be the main event of their like big card. And over here in the UFC, it's the featured prelim. And actually, it's supposed to be a little bit lower on the card because this was supposed to be like the featured prelim because that got moved up since the Van fight fell out. But either way, in another promotion, this is a main event fight. And here it is as a prelim. Two Bellator guys looking to find their footing in the UFC. Pico looked really good and sharp in that first couple minutes of his fight with Lerone Murphy. That was his UFC debut. Did he kind of deserve that big of a jump up in his debut fight? No. Lerone Murphy was fighting to be a #1 contender who we thought could get a title shot off that win. And now, obviously, Lerone Murphy has lost the #1 contenders fight to Evloev, but besides the point, yeah. So Pico was pretty aggressive right away. Was clinching with Murphy, throwing some big combinations, but ultimately then got slept badly. Like one of the nastiest spinning elbow finishes of last year because there were multiple. Dude shredded, by the way. But he was a top dog in Bellator, and both these guys were. This would have been one of the biggest fights at Bellator, but now Pitbull and Pico looking to find their footing in the UFC. Pitbull has 2 fights so far. First fight lost to Rodriguez. Second fight beat Dan Ige. Oh, and he was supposed to fight Keita in Paris, and that fight got canceled. So he was supposed to fight already 3 times. And yeah, he's back in Miami because around this time last year he fought in his debut. So interesting decision by the UFC to want to kill one of their Bellator signees, but I don't mind it. I'm like, let's just get this out of the way. See, like, they're putting a fight that one of the biggest fights of Bellator and UFC to just see like who would have came out on top in this fight. Both are a little bit past, their prime. Well, Pitbull more than Pico, but I don't know. People are saying Pitbull is going to get this one done. I don't know. I feel like Pico maybe could get this one done. I don't know enough about these guys, honestly. I haven't watched enough of their fights and other promotions to really get the background. Like, I picked Pitbull to beat Egan, but I picked Murphy to beat Pico, I believe. And I also picked Pitbull, I think, to beat Yair Rodriguez, which he lost, but it's an interesting fight. We'll see how it plays out. And, yeah, Pico looking to really, like, he needs this to really get back into things after the way he lost in his debut. There's not much to say on this other than Cub Swanson, a legend of the game. And this is his retirement fight. But I'm actually surprised he came to win one more time. I thought he would retire in his last fight. He had a nasty finish where he finished Quarantillo. That was a crazy finish by Cub. So he's a gangster. Like Nate Landwehr, Nate the Train's always willing to bring it. Had that crazy fight versus Du Hoi Choi. Got finished by Morgan Charrier. A little bit of on a losing side of things, but this is just meant to be a barn burner, entertaining fight to open up the card. 2 guys that are going to throw at each other. And I'm sure Cub's going to want to give the fans the most entertaining final fight of his career because this is Cub's last fight. Pretty crazy record at 30-14, so hopefully they give us a classic to open up this card. A classic for the ages. So that's Cub versus Nate. Not much else to say on that. Honestly, I'm going with Cub. I think Cub just with the... I could see it. I could see Cub putting to sleep Nate Landwehr to open up this card. Everyone's going nuts. That's what I'm going with. Paulo Costa versus Azamat Murzakonov. Just to remind people, right? Paulo Costa, he's debuting at light heavyweight This guy was a natural middleweight his entire career. I think he only stepped up one other time at heavyweight, and that was on short notice. It was pretty bad performance, I guess, versus Marvin Vettori or something like that. Or is that even at light heavyweight? I don't even remember the exact history, but he's taken on Azamat Murzakonov. People call the dark horse of the light heavyweight division. And yeah, it's an interesting fight. Azamat Murzakonov is a guy who's on the come up, who's undefeated and could be built into a top 5 name in this light heavyweight division because they need newer names now that Pereira has cleared out. Obviously, at the top of this card, a new champion will be crowned. And he could be one of these guys that's going to be challenging for the title next. But they're giving a guy who moved up a division this as his first fight. But Paulo Costa is still kind of like a name that they could use Azamat Murzakonov to build up and continue to pack his record in a little bit. Like they could say, yeah, if Murzakonov goes into a top 5 fight next, that'll be like, oh yeah, he just beat Paulo Costa on his way to title. Before this, he beat Rakic. But yeah, dude's been sleeping dudes. He's built like everyone says, he's built like a waiter or a taxi driver. I don't even know. Like, this dude's built like not your average guy, average fighter, you would think, but that's the UFC for you. You see these average dudes that could put on masterclass performances and put you to the sleep in quick fashion. And that's exactly what Murzakonov is. Costa's riding high off a good comeback win versus Roman Kopylov after losing to Whitaker, to other names. I mean, if we look real quick at Paulo Costa recently, yeah, he lost to Whitaker, lost to Strickland. But then he beat Luke Rockhold before that. Of course, the big fight with Izzy. So not too many other fights since 2020. Hasn't been fighting as consistently. This dude is one of the most injury-prone and pulled-out fighters in the UFC, but beat Kopylov, he's coming in there. I'm picking Murzakonov to maybe win a decision. Maybe he's not going to finish Costa, but who knows, man. We'll see how Costa does in a new division where he adds a little more muscle. The weight cut's not going to affect him as much, but will he gas out? Has he worked on his cardio issues? We'll see, man. We'll see. Reyes versus Walker. People are saying this could be the beginning. This could be a double knockout situation. Johnny Walker, I did not expect him to finish Zhang Mingyang the way he did. I really thought Zhang Mingyang was on the come up, but here we are. Johnny Walker off the win versus Zhang Mingyang. Dominick Reyes off the loss to Carlos Ulberg after putting together a resurgence of a win streak. Where we were almost saying that Dominick Reyes could be next to challenge for a title if he would have gotten past Ulberg. He literally would have been in the main event if he would have beaten Ulberg. What am I saying? But here he is, looking for the bounce back fight. He had quick finishes versus Krylov, versus who else? Krylov, Anthony Smith, Dustin Jacoby. Really like an impressive few wins to get back on track. This will be an entertaining fight, bro. Unless Johnny Walker decides some shenanigans at the beginning where he tries to shoot a takedown like he did versus Zhang Mingyang, but dude, these dudes are going to be throwing haymakers at each other. It's going to be wild in the clinch. Both these guys are so live to get clipped. That's why people are saying, like, yo, with the right combinations and things thrown, both these guys could knock out each other. I almost feel like they should just do it on, like, I know it's fixed fighting, but if they would do it on purpose, bro, it would be the most hilarious thing. Like, they just had a mutual agreement. Let's just stand in the middle and throw at each other, and then both of them get clipped in the middle. So that's Walker and Reyes. Should be a really fun, entertaining, and goofy fight between both these dudes. I'm going to go with Reyes. Because Walker is just so goofy. I don't know. Like, I feel like Reyes will get a good bounce back win here. And then he would have won 4 out of his last 5. And put him right back on track. Curtis Blaydes versus Josh Hokit. Really big jump up for Josh Hokit. But when people first saw this fight, they reacted like, how did Josh Hokit deserve this? He's only fought scrubs to start off his UFC career. But I said, I don't care. I don't mind it because UFC needs new heavyweight stars. Josh Hokit's the one who's willing to bring personality to this division, to bring entertaining promos, to sell himself. And of course, who he's finished has been complete trash, unranked guys. Like, I didn't even know this guy. And then Freeman had the middle finger walk-off KO, which was honestly a sick. I do not mind it that they're bringing in fresh new guys that are looking to be entertaining and giving them this chance to see if they could swim with the Sharks. And that's exactly what Curtis Blaydes is. A staple in the heavyweight division, which isn't saying much. These guys stay in the upper ranks of the division for mad long because there's nobody else good enough to overthrow them. That's how bad the heavyweight division is. But Blaydes, he wins one here, he loses some here. He had an impressive win versus Almeida. Then got his title shot versus Aspinall, got finished quick. Then beat Rizvan Kuniev, who that ages better a little bit as a win. Rizvan Kuniev just picked up a win, but was it the most entertaining fight? No. Kuniev hasn't really been finishing people. But here it is right here. It's an interesting, entertaining matchup at heavyweight. And I do not mind it. I am not mad at it. I think this is great. This could either push Josh Hokit like crazy to literally the top upper ranks of the heavyweight division. And I honestly think Hokit's going to get it done. I know a lot of people are saying going with Blaydes. And normally this is very rare to see a guy like this who's only beaten 2 unranked opponents in his first 2 fights in the UFC get put to the number 5 ranked guy. But the heavyweight division needs it. I think it's a good fight. I think Hokit is fully capable of putting it on Curtis Blaydes. It's going to be an interesting fight. Very interesting fight. Just a lot of very interesting fights. I think the most lopsided fight on this card so far I picked is Azamat Murzakonov. I think he's the most favored guy here out of all these main fights that you could say will most likely finish Paulo Costa. But Landwehr and Cub, kind of an even fight, pretty big bar burner fight. Both guys are just going to slug and brawl. Then Reyes, Walker, I'm kind of leaning towards Reyes. And Blaydes, Hokit. I mean, Blaydes is a top-tier guy, but who knows? Maybe Hokit's going to get it. I think Hokit's going to get it done. And finally, we got Jiri Procházka versus Carlos Ulberg. A new light heavyweight champion will be crowned this week after Alex Pereira, of course, vacated his title to move up to try and become a triple division champion. We could be in a timeline where freaking Jiri Procházka versus Alex Pereira are both champions. Procházka has another chance to get and become, honestly, has been one of the most entertaining light heavyweights in this division for the last few years. Of course, was a champion at a point. The only man to beat him was Alex Pereira. So that's really insane to say that like nobody else in this division has beaten him yet. Of course, lost to Pereira both times for a title. But in the between then, he beat Rakic at UFC 300. He finished Jamal Hill. He beat Khalil Roundtree in his last outing back in October. Beat Glover Teixeira for the belt before ultimately getting injured. Dominick Reyes, Volkan Ozdemir, all of his wins pretty much, besides the Teixeira, where she went from a combination and crazy, like, violent, chaotic punching to a submission finish. Besides that, all of his wins have been by devastating KO. Devastating KOs. Just crazy, chaotic fighter in Jiri. One of the most entertaining personalities and, like, characters you will see in this sport. Literally, dude, the dude trains in the mountains. He's yelling at the top of his lungs. He's sitting in rooms meditating only by the light of a candle. Jiri Procházka is a human being like no other, honestly. He really just, the way he lives life is just different. Like, he's a different type and breed of a human being. And just, it's honestly impressive how he's able to keep himself so, like, sharp and disciplined in his ways. The way he trains, he's one of the most intense fighters, especially when it comes to his stare downs. When him and Pereira had that stare down, and also I think he's planning on having a kid a few days after he hopes to win this title, and he's taking on Carlos Ulberg, who's very dangerous. The way he's been looking, 14-1, trains out of the same gym as Volk, Izzy, and Dan Hooker, from New Zealand, the Black Jaguar, right? He's been putting on some pretty big performances, beating names like Jan Blachowicz, Dominick Reyes in his last fight, Volkan Ozdemir. Decision, but then KO'd Dominick Reyes in his last fight in the first round. Alonzo Menafield too. I'm not going to lie, Ulberg looks dangerous as an opponent for Jiri Procházka. But I'm always going to ride with my guy, Jiri Procházka. Until he proves otherwise, that he could lose to someone other than Alex Pereira, I am not betting against Jiri Procházka. The dude is a legend. He's one of the most chaotic fighters. The way he does is he just accumulates so much damage in earlier rounds. Kind of similar, like, with his last two fights with Jamal Hill, with Roundtree, he's kind of like in a competitive, almost like, and especially in the Roundtree fight, he was losing in the earlier rounds to Roundtree. Roundtree was on his way to winning that fight. In the Jamal Hill fight, it was more competitive, but he accumulates all this damage. He's getting chopped up by the legs. He's getting wobbly. He's getting reckless. He still fights a super reckless style despite not learning his lesson from Pereira. And then he ends up in the back end of the fight just putting on an onslaught in that third round, an onslaught of attacks, of chaotic punches, elbows, just throwing everything at you and not letting up, just putting so much damage that eventually it's just too much to handle. And that's what we saw happen to Hill, get completely like check hooked by Prochazka to the floor. We saw Roundtree take way too much damage. Prochazka just walked him down. That was an insane, chaotic fight in which he walked him down at the end of that third round. Like I said, he was losing the first two rounds, comes back, finishes until Roundtree crumbles to the floor. And yeah, Prochazka now finding himself in another championship fight. And I'm really like, I'm super confident in Prochazka that Jiri's going to get this done. Jiri's going to get this done. Jiri's going to be light heavyweight champion again at this division. It sets up a whole new line of fights in this division rather than Pereira, who was running laps on everyone. You know, Prochazka versus Magomed Ankalaev could be interesting. Robert Whittaker probably is fighting Ankalaev next. So if Whittaker happens to somehow beat Ankalaev, Whittaker could be an entertaining light heavyweight fight because that's the new division he's going to be in. Dominick Reyes, maybe if he wins. Obviously, as I said, Azamat Murzakonov could be on his way up to a title fight. So Prochazka could go on another run here in the UFC career as a light heavyweight champion. But Ulberg also is super dangerous. Like, Ulberg, who knows what he's definitely capable of chinning Jiri. But ultimately, I got Jiri winning in a super probably like nerve-wracking fight because Ulberg, at any moment could probably hurt Jiri. But that's what Jiri does best. You really got to put him down to put him down. Like, he does not go away just because you hurt him. He could be as wobbly as can be, and he'll still come back and just be chaos, bro. So this is gonna be sick to have Prochazka like hopefully violently finish Carlos Ulberg. I'm just a bigger fan of Jiri, and I think the sport's better with him as a champion. And that's what I got for this weekend. I got for Jiri to win and beat Carlos Ulberg. So there you go. That's my picks for UFC 327 in Miami. It lost a big one in Van versus Tyro, which was the doubleheader. But still, we got the light heavyweight title fight for new champion. Hokit versus Blaydes. Reyes versus Walker. Murzakonov versus Costa, and then Cub. And the rest of the prelims, really more of this section is good. And yeah, solid all-around card. Nothing too crazy again. The last 2 years of Miami cards have been way better than this, but either way, we got another numbered event this weekend. And hopefully I'll be able to see you guys in the next one for a breakdown reaction to how this card plays out.